local people, local news and events, local sports, local matters. For all things Lloydminster area, this is Live with Kurt Price.
Welcome inside the new Lloydminster Nissan, now located on Highway 17 South. Finance a new vehicle with the new Lloydminster Nissan today. Get $1,000 cash back all month of November. You can come see us for a fantastic selection, whether you're looking for a new car, truck, or SUV. Stop in at the new Lloydminster Nissan. Have a look at our incredible inventory here. Get $1,000 cash back with your financing with the new Lloydminster Nissan to use how you see fit. And with Christmas coming up, you might want to use it for that. Jonathan Torresan is a former city council member now who served 8 years on Lloydminster City Council, and he's here today to talk about the city council civic. You're writing stuff down already. When we decided to do this, like I said, I need somebody kind of like a keep an eye on things and stuff. And you were like, sure, but I heard you say some stuff that's not true too. And now you're writing down. What did I?
You said former. I am technically still a city councilor until 11:59 p.m. on election day.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
The level of things that are stated that are technically incorrect, I tell you, man.
We started writing stuff down. I was like, oh my God, he's writing stuff down already. But he is going to be a former councilor. He's an outgoing city council member, and he's here to talk about the city council civic election and what he's seen and heard so far on the campaign trail, whether he's liked or whether he hasn't liked some stuff. And we really appreciate him giving us some time today. Superior Water, you're not going to write down while I...
No, your ad reads are your ad reads.
Okay. Superior Water specializes in nothing but water, and with over 22 years in the business, they're proud and confident that their water and their service is superior. For iron filters, water softeners, reverse osmosis distillers, chlorine removal, and H2S odor removal, give Superior Water a call today, 780-875-6636, or stop in and see them right beside Sheepskin Loft on 57th Avenue, and stay hydrated with pure, clean water. I drink Superior Water because I like the taste. It is, after all, superior water. I want to thank the Lloydminster Exhibition for having me out last night. They had a few celebrities, and I use the term loosely, out to serve some meals last night at Feastival. It was a fantastic night. Most stations sold out. If you're going to go next year, remember to go as early as you can. But it was just a terrific night, and the WLS Convention Center was packed, and it was really great food. It was nice to run into people that maybe you haven't seen in a while and chat with them as well. Made for a really, really nice night. I'm already looking forward to next year and what they're going to serve next year. I had the beef, the roast beef, and Yorkshire pudding. Gotta try to make that at home. It was nice. They had the recipe cards and everything right there. Also at the Lloydminster Exhibition last night, the Chase the Ace draw went over $100,000. So the Ace is not drawn. So next Wednesday, just 21 cards in the deck. And as sales opened this morning, the jackpot starts at over $97,000. Go to lloydex.com for all the details. The Remembrance Day service here in Lloydminster is Monday. The Lloydminster Legion Branch number 39 President Scott Gorman joined us this week with a reminder to put on those poppies and show your support for our veterans. And the dollars raised through the poppy campaign, they stay local. And the service on Monday is in the new gymnasium at the Lloyd Comp, and they're asking everyone to be in their seats by 10:30. You're also invited back to the Legion after the ceremony to enjoy a light lunch. Shayla Miller is performing at the Vic Juba Theatre tonight, showcasing songs from her new album, After the Masquerade, as well as some of her more traditional country music as well, and her country songs. Tickets are just $20 each, and proceeds benefit the Vic Juba Theatre lighting upgrades and the restoration of the log church at Weaver Park. Go to vicjubatheatre.ca for tickets, and tomorrow night, Ravine will be in Lloydminster. I remember seeing Ravine, and, well, I guess it was his dad. It was Peter Ravine at the Lloyd Comp High School in the 90s. And now Tyrone Ravine has taken over for his dad, and tickets are just $25. And that is coming up again tomorrow night. Then Sunday night at the Vic Juba Theatre, the ultimate tribute to Heart will take the stage. And all of those shows are 7:30 shows, and going to be there tonight. Hoping to go tomorrow night to Ravine, and There's a lot of good shows.
So I'm going to jump into your ad reading.
Well, at least you didn't write anything down.
No,
Sure.
I didn't put anything in. But just something that I thought people maybe, should know is that, especially when you look at the Dr. H.A. McDonald series shows at the Vic Juba, every show is like a fundraiser because every single one affects the bottom line of the Vic Juba. So if you want to continue to have great performing arts and a great performing arts center within your community, every time you buy a ticket is like a fundraiser. I'm going to both the Shayla Miller and the Ravine show, so I'm looking forward to going to one with my wife and mother, and then the other one I'm taking my kids. So, but yeah, just keep in mind, every time you buy a ticket, it's like you're donating to the show or donating to the theater because it goes right into their bottom line, which helps support performing arts in the community.
Are you going to go on stage for Ravine? Are you going to get hypnotized?
I 100% refuse to get hypnotized.
Oh, okay. Well, I saw you, we saw you in the wrestling ring, so I thought the showman might be going on the stage too. So
no, I don't. I'm
if
too
you never
afraid
see
to be
kids, it's a little hard
hypnotized.
too, right?
I'm afraid to be hypnotized. I just don't know. I don't want to turn into a chicken and never come back.
Okay, all right. Very proud of the trip that Heather and I have put together for this spring in Europe. Never been to Europe, but Heather traveled to Holland for the 60th anniversary of the liberation, and 2025 will mark the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. And Heather and I, along with Lambert Travel, have put together a trip through the Netherlands, Brussels, and France to honor our country's sacrifice in both World War I and World War II. We've customized it to include Canadian war cemeteries, Vimy Ridge, Normandy, and Passchendaele. And we're also going to see war memorials, concentration camp, battlefields, and yes, we'll even have some downtime in Paris. And I think we've done a pretty good job here of planning this trip, but also putting it together at a very reasonable price. So I encourage you to do some research, look into it yourself. You'll see we've priced this as best that we can possibly do so. And then we'll travel together, we'll see the sights together, we'll celebrate our country's soldiers and sacrifice together, and we'll enjoy a little bit together as well. Go to lamberttravel.ca today to see the whole trip. And if you have questions, you can call 780-875-4414. You can also visit lamberttravel.ca. It is a bucket list trip. It's a bucket list trip for me, for sure. Nominate someone today for Cupcakes for Caregivers, the Lloydminster District United Way and Lloydminster Sobeys present Cupcakes for Caregivers as a great way to reward and acknowledge the great work our nurses and doctors and care home staff do to take care of us all. But it is also a way for us to say thank you to those that maybe don't even have a title, but see those that can't take care of themselves get to where they need to go, whether it's driving them to appointments or serving meals or helping shovel their sidewalks, checking in regularly. Those that help others, and especially the ones that we love. If there's someone in your life that does that, you can send us an email to livewithkurtprice@gmail.com at any time and nominate a caregiver today. Well, I got the shirt on here, supporting the Riders this weekend. It is a huge, huge game coming up on Saturday. And so I thought I'd do the old Rider look here. So I'm pretty excited so I'll try to concentrate, but my mind's been on football so much, Jonathan. I got to tell you. So if you find me wanting,
if I just keep talking for 45 minutes straight, that's fine with me too.
Okay.
You ask all the questions you like.
Okay. BioClean Disaster Services is committed, certified, reliable, and helping get your life back. BioClean Disaster Services is a local company. They're Lloydminster's largest restoration company. 1-833-246-8326. You see their name on the BioClean Aquatic Center. You see them on park benches and places like that. And they love to support local and give back to the community. They are what this community needs when it comes to a restoration company. 1-833-246-8326. Taking care of your family is priority number one with BioClean Disaster Services, getting you back to where you were before the fire, flood, whatever that disaster may have been. 1-833-246-8326. Take a break, and when we come back, Jonathan Torresan loads up and doesn't hold back.
At Lloydminster and District Co-op, membership matters more. Because being part of a co-op means you're connected to something bigger than yourself. From long-held legacy by those who built our communities to people you call family, friends, and neighbors. When you're a Lloyd Co-op member, you're an owner in a local business that prides itself on purpose alongside profit. You earn cash back. You help support causes that matter most, and you're building a better way of life for the next generation. Membership matters more.
How can you help support the oil and gas industry and jobs in Western Canada? The answer is closer than you think. Sell your scrap metals to PWM Steel. PWM sells scrap iron to Evraz, located in Regina. Evraz's #1 customer is the energy sector, building pipes and plates for the oil and gas industry. PWM Steel is your locally owned metal recycler and steel service center in the area. Plus, they're a strong supporter of the community. PWM Steel, your top steel supplier for Alberta and Saskatchewan for 40 years.
At Jason Arden Associates Cooperators, we're proud to be a top-rated local insurance company that offers flexible solutions and expert advice for all your insurance and investment needs. We'll work with you to tailor your insurance specific to your needs, and we offer investment advice that always puts you first. At Cooperators, one of our core values is to give back to the communities that we live in. Thanks to the support of our clients in Lloydminster and area, in 2023, Jason Arden Associates has donated $40,000 to local nonprofits, charities, students, athletes, and other special events. How does your insurance company support our community?
It's more than just taxes at L&A CPA. Assurance, accounting, retirement planning, estate planning, business consulting, financial consulting, farm program support, and bookkeeping. But yes, there is always taxes. The team at L&A CPA is committed to helping you achieve your best results and will be there to assist you every step of the way. L&A CPA, with offices in Provost, Vermilion, and Lloydminster.
Welcome back inside the new Lloydminster Nissan today. Man, what a beautiful spring day we have today. So great day to walk the lot here at the new Lloydminster Nissan. Great to welcome in a current city council member, an outgoing city council member. As of 11:59 on election day, he will step down from his role that he has held for 8 years. Jonathan Torresan is here. He's been a frequent guest on the program and updating us, and we've really appreciated that. And he does some stuff with the Vic Juba Theatre, so we may be seeing him again.
Yeah,
actually
possibly.
on the program.
Yeah, I'll try and be as much of a spokesperson as I can for the good things that go on there. But I appreciate coming on your show today and having the opportunity to speak. And more than anything, I appreciate the public of Lloydminster for putting their faith in me in the last 2 elections. And unfortunately, my priorities are different now. That I need to ensure that I'm the best father and husband I can be, so that I can have 3 wonderful members of the community who grow up great here.
So the first time I interviewed you was when you were running the second time.
Yep.
And I actually thought to myself, here's a guy that could be our next mayor. Like I honestly, I think I told a lot of people that this is a guy I think could be the next mayor of the city. Do you ever consider it?
There's 2 things that would hold that back. One is I'm pretty highly trained as a CPA, and I'm bought into a CPA firm. It's called Gervais Torresan CPA. There's my small plug. But being a partner there, I don't see myself changing career paths to go back into politics in that way. I do think part of me would love to be a mayor, and I think that I could be an effective mayor at some point, but I just don't see it as being anything that I do during my working career, because you go to school for 4 years, you do an extra 3 years of training to get your professional designation, and then you work for 10 years into that to become really proficient at it as much as you can be, and it would be a real disservice to your family that's invested so much into that just take a step back and go all the way into politics and do something totally different. I still think that skill set would be helpful, but I appreciate the sentiment, but at the same time, I don't want the mayor's job either. There's the parts of that job that I think would be tough. Everybody hates the mayor. Not everybody hates the mayor. Clearly everybody loves the mayor because nobody wanted to run against him. But when all the heat comes, it seems to hit the mayor harder than it hits the councillors. Whether that's fair or not, I don't know. It just seems to be the way that it is. And I don't know that I would love that part of it either.
Well, I spent some time talking to him last night at Festival about that, and it definitely wears on you. Like you can say it doesn't all you want, but I think it definitely would wear on absolutely anybody.
Yeah.
So you've been watching our show with all the candidates. You watched all the candidates, which is a lot of watching. Thank you for doing that. You checked out Sean Newman. You've been reading the newspaper. Check it out wherever candidates go, including the forum.
Yep.
And there's another one tonight, by the way. There's a kind of it was described to me tonight as a speed dating thing. at the
Okay.
Legacy Center,
Okay.
where you can go and sit down with a candidate, and they blow a whistle or honk a horn or something, and you.
You know, we did
move to
that
the
in my
next one.
first term, that we did something similar to that, and I thought it was actually pretty effective because everyone kind of got their own time with a prospective counselor to ask the questions that were important to them. So I think it's a good process. It was something similar, and I think it's a good part of the process.
I think it starts at 6 tonight.
Okay.
It might be 6:30, but.
I will not go to that.
So you've been watching though. You've been taking notes. You've been, and
Yeah.
you've been calling. You told me you're going to call me out on some stuff as well that I've said. So I'm looking forward to that. But what I wanted to start with was this idea, and it seems to be going. And I've heard it at the forum. I've heard it in several places. I've heard some people say it here, that we need to change direction in the city. Change direction. Is that an insult to administration, to council members that are current outgoing councilors like yourself? When people say change direction, is that a bad thing for you? And what do you think they mean by that?
Well, in some senses, what do they mean by change direction? So, I'm fine with it as a statement in general because, we did a lot of heavy lifting in that first term, and that strategic plan that came out of that was really the one we've been following for the majority of it. There was some tweaks and adjustments that were made at the end of, or at the beginning of my second term. But there's no question there's going to be so many new faces around the table. There's so much has changed in 8 years that going back to doing a kind of a from the ground up building blocks new strategic plan to see where the city needs to go in the next 4 years and build on that to make really what is a 20-year plan. I think that does need to happen, and I look forward to seeing whatever the new council comes up with. So changing direction isn't a bad thing. That means adapting and changing with the times, which I think every level of government needs to do that.
So everybody has kind of an expiration date sort of thing? Is that what you?
Well, every plan has an expiration date. There's some things that might still be present in the new strategic plan that were in the old one, but there's going to be new perspectives, a new way of looking at things around the table. And in government, the only thing that is constant is change. So you're going to have change in technology, you're going to have change in, the way the world works, and all of these things, we got to make adjustments to them. Like you just even think back to even this program, was this types of programs like this weren't nearly as popular 8 years ago, right?
No, not at all.
Or
Yep.
even you look at Zoom meetings, things like that. Like, what is the way that we work, and what is the way that we use technology for how we do business in the city, and different things like that. So, so much in the world has changed. So I think change in direction is probably not the worst thing in the world, and there could be ways of finding efficiencies by doing that.
Is there one thing that you heard that you were like, man, I got to set the record straight on this because I don't like hearing this. I'm hearing this again and again, or I'm hearing this or seeing this. Is there anything that really stood out to you?
There's a few big ones, but the first one I'll start was Kurt Price.
Okay.
It's not a big deal. There was something you said yesterday, might have been yesterday or the day before, either way. The mayor only gets to vote if there's a tie.
That's what I understand. I understand.
You
his
would-
vote only counts.
You would be incorrect.
Okay.
In our procedure bylaw, the mayor votes on absolutely every item, and he has to vote on every single item. You can't not vote on something.
But does he vote last?
Nope, he votes at the same time as everyone else.
Okay.
And any tie vote, if for some reason, because we were a councillor short, if any tie vote happens, then the motion is defeated. So there is no mayor votes last. He votes the same time as everyone else in the same way as everyone else. The only thing he doesn't do is he doesn't make motions because other people around the table make motions because he's chairing the meeting.
Okay. So myth number one, busted. Kurt Price, busted.
Hey, it's not a big deal, but it's just one of those things that you
I
hear over
appreciate
the
that.
process.
I need to know that because I've heard that several times. I've thought that. And you know what? I've sat through council meetings, like not in person, but online. I guess I never really paid attention to,
Yeah, well, there you go. There's number one. But back to your other question is things that you've heard and things like that.
Yep.
There's no question. There's things that I find somewhat concerning, or I don't fully know what they mean because there's no depth necessarily in the way that the different forums and things like that are formatted, or in someone's brochures what that means. So one of the ones that I see is cut taxes or cut spending.
That's a big one.
So my concern, I guess, when we come to that is, okay, fine. Let's say we do cut taxes. What's the first thing that's going to go? The first thing that's likely going to go is going to be infrastructure spending. Okay, so we cut down on our capital. Well, if you would have seen the budget for 2025, we already kind of know that we've got an infrastructure gap, and an infrastructure gap being, these are the things we got to pay for in the next 10 years. If we stay on this same pace of how we raise taxes, we're going to raise this much money. And the gap between those two things is $550 million. So if you cut spending on those things today and say, yeah, you know what, we got to cut taxes, first thing that's going to go is capital. Okay, your 550 gets bigger. That's a bigger number now. And don't get me wrong, not all that money is going to have to be paid by taxes. Some of it will be paid by development levies with growth and different things like that. There's going to be opportunities for grants from other level of government. There's going to be, just other kind of capital programs from provincial governments that come through that are going to help pay for some of that. But that doesn't change the fact that that's a very large number. And if you cut capital today, you are just making that problem larger in the future. So then the other side is, okay, let's say it's not capital. Let's say if you're going to cut taxes, we're going to need to reduce services. Okay, what service? Is it the pool? You don't want kids to be able to go swim at the pool? Or maybe you want to raise the fees? Because I know people talk about, running government more like a business. Well, there aren't many pools that run profitably, because if you were to charge the full cost of every person actually going to use the pool, it would probably be like $35 or $40 per entrance instead of the $7 or $8. So you got to look at these things and kind of understand, like, is there an effect on, what you're saying? What does it actually look like in practice? So then what are the other services? You're going to talk first recreation, and you're going to talk about those nice to haves that some people would call, or you're going to talk about basic services. Do we want to cut basic services? We do one annual snow clearing or one annual snow removal, normally budgeted in there. Do we want to remove that one annual snow removal? Is that what people want to see? Or do we pull from reserves? And reserves are a different issue altogether, because that's money that helps us stabilize the tax rate increases or decreases. And if you keep pulling from reserves, then you don't have any reserves, and you can't do that anymore. And everything ends up being peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys. And there's no kind of smooth operation of the city. So I have a difficult time when I hear about cut services, because what services do you want to cut? And I understand you can't always make everyone happy. That's not the job, is to make everyone happy, but I don't think that there, in my experience of being on council, that there are a bunch of superfluous services that aren't really kind of necessary to have the good quality of life that we all expect.
Did you have to cut anything that you thought, I don't want to cut this, but we have to cut this?
Like in my time on council? You know what, to be honest with you, the things that we have cut, where we've cut back, were well reasoned. They were well thought out. There was some communication with the users. But at the end of the day, it was things that cost way too much money, that there was just not enough users of those things. So an example of that would be, there used to be a little workout gym at the BioClean Aquatic Center. There was a little room just off, and that was a gym. There was only maybe a dozen people using it regularly. And the city saw an opportunity that, well, we could have more birthdays and things like that in here. There's really not that many people using here. And it turned out that I actually personally knew two of the people that were the regular 12 users, and they were pretty annoyed at me. But at the same time, it's, in the grand scheme of things, that's a cost where it's a cost of doing business, where you could get more benefit or more revenue from removing that service from there and offering something different. Another one was the child minding services at the Service Sports Center. Yeah. After COVID, there was very, very low subscription to the service. And to the extent that I think it was costing the city something like $80,000 a year to run that thing at a loss, and very few people using it. So, you make adjustments as you see these things. And those are the kind of services that off the top of my head I recall us cutting. But, all of them were slam dunks in a way. I get that there's some people who relied on those services and they appreciated them. But when you look at the big picture and how it fits into the city operations overall, they were things that kind of had to go because of low buy-in, low subscription, and you have to continue to be efficient and find ways to save money.
So there's people saying that, okay, but things are tough right now. Times are tough right now. So we got to take a closer look. We got to dive deeper into that. Jonathan, what do you hear when you
Yeah, I
understand
that. And the thing that I have a hard time with is when we talk about the growth of the personal expenses and things like that, the inflation on the products we all buy every day as families or as businesses. And there's no question, that's a real thing. We all see it on our grocery bill, we all see it on our electricity bill. But it's not to say that the city's buying more stuff now than it did before to try and, boost the economy or anything like that. There's a comment I heard where, in inflation, you don't buy more things to try and deal with your problem. We're not buying more things. We're buying the same amount of things, but it costs us more to do it. So if we reduce the things that we buy, that will result in a reduction of services. And I think it's important that we maintain quality of life, because maintaining that high quality of life is important for lots of reasons. One, to make it a nice place to live. Two, from an economic development point of view, because people want to open businesses where it's a nice place to live and they can get employees to move there and they want them to live there and they want them to be able to, enjoy a high quality of life. And that's an incredibly important part of economic development, is community development. So then you look at something like, an example, electricity. The city's electricity bill, whether that's through carbon tax or whether that's just the overall increase in costs, the electricity bill from last year, 2 years ago, I think was $4.5 or $5 million in that ballpark. It's 7.5 now. We're not lighting up a whole bunch of extra lights. There are some, services like our wastewater treatment plant that are going to use more. But still, the point is, this is the cost of doing business has gone up for us, and that's the way inflation has affected our operations. And without a decrease in services or without cutting back capital, which our current budget is cutting back capital in a way that is, probably more than the overall long-term health of the city would benefit from, but it is cutting back right now on capital. But still, it's that question of whether you want to decrease services, and it's really hard to decrease those basic services because that brings up a question of safety.
Okay, you keep hearing wants and needs as part of that, wants and needs. And some people have kind of lumped the new arena, the Cenovus Energy Hub, into that, do we need it? We want it, but do we need it? How do you see? And it has been brought up specifically.
Yeah, well,
yeah. And the cost of it, because it's going to raise,
sure.
It's going to cost more to run it.
And I think if you take a step back, and no one's wrong, I guess, in any of these opinions or beliefs. So I know I came on here saying I'm going to come in hot about some of this stuff, but those are just opinions, and they're totally valid, and that's fine. I think what's important is we take a step back and kind of look at the history of that project and where we started from to where we got to, and what are the different things that we did. So one of them is the recreation. So if we go back and we look at the buildings assessment that was in 2019, when we take a look at all the buildings, put them together and said, okay, what's the useful life of these different things? Civic Center's got 2 to 4 years worth of useful life left. And that was in 2019. And we've been keeping it limping along since, as safely as possible. So then we take a look at what did we do next. We went to the public and we said, we know this is the next building that needs to be replaced, and we know people are really interested in a new pool, so we did a recreation feasibility study. And it's on the website. It was published in 2020 in the summer, and it looked at, okay, what does a new multi-use facility look like that had both a pool and had dual ice rink attached? And what it found was, you put those two things together and the price would have more or less been, double from one to the other. And don't get me wrong, the prices were way lower at the time, and inflation has changed so much things, and cost of goods to build significantly different. But let's say it was ballpark $40 million for the other, and then the pool doubled it at about $80 million for those two things together. Now you go forward a little bit, we apply for grant money, we had to make a decision quickly about where this thing is going to go. We knew Saskatchewan was the only government that had any money to be able to offer through certain grant programs. So we're like, yeah, let's put it in Saskatchewan, where's the available land? Fine, we pick a spot. So now we pick that spot and we apply for the grant money, and by George, we were successful in getting the grant money. And Saskatchewan didn't have that much money to give as a province. Like it only had, let's say $30 million ballpark in the pot, and we got $16 million of it. I don't remember what the exact number was, but we got substantially most of the money that Saskatchewan had to give, and all the other Saskatchewan municipalities are shaking their fists at us saying, how did you guys do it? So then Saskatchewan gives us the 16, the feds match that 16. All of a sudden, we've got $32 million. And now some of the pricing starts coming back. And what does the pricing coming back say? This thing's way more expensive than we thought it was going to be. And we'd already abandoned the pool side of things at that point when we applied for the grant, because we knew that we couldn't have double the cost. Like, it just wasn't feasible.
They'd look at it and go, no.
No. So when we applied for the grant, it was for the dual ice and no pool attached. But then we get the pricing back. And what does the pricing say? Well, it's gone up a whole bunch. So now we're left with decision making. Do we keep going and follow the path, or do we give back the $32 million? Okay, can we change it to just single ice for now?
Okay.
You'd have to give back the $32 million.
You would, eh?
Yeah. So now the question is, when you look at the pricing of how it shook out was, do we have an event center ice that we pay for ourselves, or do we get a free second set of ice by keeping the $32 million and making it balloon up to, and letting it be that more ballooned price? Because to me, that's really what the decision was, is if we keep going down this path, we have to give that, or we get to keep that second sheet of ice, and we get the government money. And hopefully at some point, Alberta ponies up and puts some money into it.
So a lot of times what I hear is like, we're going too fancy on the rink. It's too fancy. But at the same time, people will also turn around and say, when they built the pool, they didn't build the lanes long enough.
Yeah.
When they built the pool, they cut some corners, they did this to make it reasonable, they did this, and now we've outgrown it sooner than maybe we should have. So what do you hear when you hear that mixed with, we're going too fancy on the new arena?
I have heard both arguments the equal number of times. I have heard, no, you guys should have built that thing bigger. You got to build for growth. It's not that much bigger than the existing Civic Center, although it is bigger than the existing Civic Center. And it can do a lot more things that the Civic Center couldn't, like the size of stage you can have in there and the acts you can bring in there that are not hockey related or ice related. It's going to be substantially different. But yeah, like, what was the question? Sorry.
Well, what do you hear when people say you're building the rink too fancy? And yet at the same time they go, why didn't they build the lanes longer at the Aquatic Center?
And I've heard about location. I've heard about, all those things is when you don't build growth into something. And I get it. Like, we have facilities within the city that I was guilty as well. And I'll say that. I was guilty as well of thinking operations center's too big. Why did we build it so big? That Taj Mahal there, I was one of those people. And then I see the way we fill it out. And then I see what the cost is to build things now. And if you have to build on that extra wing now, how stupid we all would have looked if we had to build that now. So I understand the argument of building for growth, and I wish we had the financial capabilities to be able to build more growth into that. Do I think it's going to service us well and has the ability to have some level of expansion of additional seats? Yes. But at the same time, you come up against budgets and you got to make tough decisions. And it's for the cost that it is at this point. I'm glad we didn't push it farther because, there would be a chance that we would be building nothing right now. If we had a pool built into that plan, we would have been building nothing because it would have doubled in price. And instead of doubling from, the 57, 58, whatever it was in that initial application when it was the dual rinks up to the 107 that it is now, don't quote me exactly on those numbers, but that's the ballpark. And that didn't include everything either, the 57 and all the underground and all the other stuff that had to happen. But if we had to do that over again and we would have had the pool attached, we would have been building nothing because the cost of that facility would have been $160 million.
I've heard it does the infrastructure around the pool, is that been factored in? Like the upgrades to the service road in and out of the Synovus Hub, the road that specifically, and I've heard this a few times, that Gold Horse Casino, I can't remember what road it is there.
Yeah.
But that road's going to need to be upgraded
Yeah,
because there's so much traffic.
Those are all part of the project cost. Those are all part of the project cost, and they weren't necessarily part of the project cost on the initial application for the grant that we got from Saskatchewan. To my memory.
I want to go back to taxes because you brought up taxes, and it's been brought up that we should lower taxes for businesses. That businesses, their taxes have gone way too high. In fact, some of our council members, some people that are running for council, are business owners who have said, "I'm running because I got my tax bill, it had gone up so much, I don't know if I can have a business here anymore. So, like, what do you think of tax breaks for businesses, and what were you hearing in those statements?
For sure, I hear and I feel for them, and I understand the sentiment. And quite frankly, we do benefit from having some large industrial in our area. And even one of your candidates spoke to how much of the tax burden is covered by large industrial and covered by commercial in general. And I think the challenge is when you make that adjustment, so let's say we want to decrease commercial taxes, unless we cut services, unless we cut capital, then you will have to increase the residential proportion. So it will hit every single household of every single person. So there's an argument to both sides of it. Whether it's fair or whether it's not really depends on your perspective. And I don't think there is a right or wrong answer to that. I think you can overburden your commercial side, and if some are feeling that that's the case, they have the opportunity to make that adjustment, but they have to understand that the alternative is going to be cut to services, cut to capital, increasing the infrastructure gap problem, or you're going to increase residential taxes by doing that. So it's all a juggling game between those things. And then we do have, it could be on the utility side of things that you might do things, because that's the other lever that could be pulled, is on the utility side of things, or the user fees. So you could, make people pay more at the pool or service center to be able to do that. But I've always been reluctant to go too far into that, because at the end of the day, those programs and services that we provide are important to be as affordable as possible for people, and having programs for people who can't afford it, we have those as well. But it's important that we do that, because that gives that high quality of life to people across the income spectrum. So it's not just rich people are able to go and have a swim, it's people from every level of kind of the income that are able to go and have a high quality of life here. And I think that that's good and meaningful from a lot of perspectives. When you look at, if you looked at crime, if you looked at homelessness, if you looked at all those things, having the community that is nice to live in, where people have that community connection to it, as well as to those services and that nostalgic feeling, I think that just helps build the overall feeling of community. So, increasing those costs would be a challenge as well. So you just got to be careful if you're going too heavy on decreasing the commercial, because it's going to have an effect elsewhere. There's a balancing act.
So of those wants and needs, a lot of people are talking about cutting some staff. With some people have mentioned, is administration too heavy at Lloydminster City Hall, and how can we thin out some staff and and also hiring is coming into question, about how many people have been hired each year. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Jonathan about that.
At Diamond 7 Meats, we work with local farm families to provide a high-quality product and a great selection for you. Try our mouth-watering smokies, pulled pork, roast beef, and more, made pure and natural with no additives or fillers. We offer custom processing, and our experienced team works for you to provide a selection of sausage, burgers, and jerkies made to your specifications. Take your grilling to the next level with a Yoder smoker. Complete the grilling experience with Canadian-made, award-winning line of House of Q barbecue sauces. We're locally owned and operated, and we look forward to seeing you today.
I'm Brian Zinchuk of PipelineOnline.ca. I used to be a pipeliner, and I've spent the last 15 years reporting on energy in Saskatchewan. PipelineOnline.ca provides comprehensive coverage of light oil, heavy oil, lithium, helium, power production including coal, wind, solar, geothermal, natural gas, and nuclear. There's a lot happening in Saskatchewan's energy sector, and Pipeline Online is there for all of it. No one else comes even close.
At CK McKean Roofing, they understand what it took to put that roof over your head for your family. With over 20 years of experience under their belt, they strive to show you that with their workmanship and their integrity. Not all roofing companies are created equal, and that's why CK McKean Roofing encourages you to focus on your most important investments, your home and your family. CK McKean Roofing. Roofers do it on top.
At Synergy Credit Union, we're more than just a financial institution. We're your partners in every step of your journey. From supporting local businesses to enhancing community life, we're committed to making a difference. Join us in shaping a brighter future. Together, we thrive, because this is Synergy.
Wellings of Lloydminster is an active 55 and over community with 66 bungalow townhome villas on a very flexible lease. Each unit contains a full kitchen with 5 appliances, walk-in showers, and in-suite laundry with 1 and 2 bedroom choices. It's no maintenance. It's a great concept. You don't have to worry about things. Where to cut your grass. You don't have to worry about trimming your bushes. Your appliances are all serviced and your snow is shoveled. It's called Care Freedom Living, and it does just that, allowing for more freedom and allowing you to live independently should you be experiencing health issues. You can call Darlene at Wellings of Lloydminster. She can answer any questions you have, and this very nice lady will walk you through one of their gorgeous villas. 780-872-8537. We're back here at the new Lloydminster Nissan. Jonathan Torresan is an outgoing city council member. He's got just under a week left to serve the community, and he's agreed to come in and kind of analyze what he's heard and what he's seen with candidates running for council in this upcoming civic election. And I mentioned before we went to break, Jonathan, that a lot of people believe we're running a little heavy with our employment at the city, and I've heard the number thrown around, 45 people hired each year by the city of Lloydminster. So I was wondering what you thought when you hear that about, like, maybe we can cut some administration staff, maybe they're doubling up on administration staff and stuff like that. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
So there's a couple things. One, because there's a lot in there. One is, I personally am not aware of a single position in the city for someone that doesn't have a job that is important to do. I'm not aware of that. Secondly, the argument that there's been 45, and I know where it came from, to be honest, and this is the one time I'll call out just because I called you out. So I think it's only fair that on Sean Newman's podcast that he asked several times, the premise of his question was 45 people added per year. And that premise of that question is bogus. If you look at the past 5 years, there's been a total of 27 net new people that have been hired at the city. And off the top of my head, the ones I can think of are new wastewater treatment plant. It requires more people to run than the old one did. Getting the alert team in to get the Alberta alert team that is working out of our detachment, they required administrative support to be able to do those things. That's another area where we added net new positions, but at the end of the day, those are increased improvements in services. So I think that those positions are well warranted and well understood by the community. Another one that comes up off the top of my head that might not be as well known to people is in asset management. So we've got an asset management plan, basically because we see that large infrastructure gap and we say, okay, we've got all these master plans that say all these different things that we need to replace. And how do we go about doing that in an intelligent way that maximizes the effectiveness of our capital plans to ensure that we're not, risking significant damage through our systems and things like that. So they hired somebody whose job is to actually go through the capital asset list and make sure that we are tracking these things properly so that we're replacing the right assets at the right time where possible. So, some of these jobs are important. I even look at our last council meeting on Monday. So our engineering staff had gone out, they had done a new wastewater master plan, stormwater master plan, and water distribution master plan. And I know you're thinking, like, what does that mean? Really, there's just a big high-level document that looks at all of our service, where it is, what is the condition of all of the service, where do we need to make upgrades or replacements to make it work properly, and what do we need to do for growth projects that are going to happen down the road. And those are the things that inform that infrastructure gap. What I can tell you is, we took an approach where we want a Lloydminster-based solution. We don't want just best practice, this, that, whatever. We want, what do we actually need for Lloydminster? So our staff actually worked with the consultants to figure out, okay, what do we need in Lloydminster to make our system work most effectively? And they ended up finding between them, I think, close to $60 million of savings. So, you might say, hey, why are you guys paying an engineer or a project manager? Like, why are you even bothering to do that? And you could say, well, that project manager, through their work of working with the consultants and making it a local plan rather than just a general run-of-the-mill plan, saved $60 million. In the grand scheme of things, we're talking about big dollars and big money, where if you don't have good, high-quality people doing that work, you're going to end up spending more money elsewhere.
The forum the other night was the first time that I've ever heard it mentioned that we need to hire a lobbyist.
Yeah.
I want to ask about that, because there were some people that were for it. There were some people that were against it. The majority were against it, of hiring this person that would basically go between Alberta and Saskatchewan and say, hey, we've got some empty lots here. Come fill these lots, or don't forget about us in Lloydminster.
Well, what you just said were two different things, to be honest with you. So the filling the lots thing is not the lobbyist. So when they say lobbyist,
but wouldn't you be lobbying? Like, wouldn't you be talking to the Saskatchewan government?
That's like an economic development salesperson.
Okay, okay.
We have one of those, and they're working on it, and they're doing everything they can within their relatively small team that they can do. It's one of those things where people say we've got too many people, but 2 people, or 3 people, they can punch way above their weight in terms of their ability to get work. But is there argument that you actually need more people in those jobs? Because in the grand schemes of things, $60,000 or $70,000, whatever it ends up being the price for, hiring one of those, if they could bring in millions of dollars worth of business, is that not good value? So, but just generally speaking, that is economic development's job, which is also, in my opinion, all of City Council's job as well. The lobbyist side of things, that is all of City Council's job, and primarily the mayor's job. The mayor is our top lobbyist, and I have never heard him say that he thinks that we need someone who's either living in or going to Regina or Edmonton every week to meet with a different minister from a different ministry. I think it's collaboration and teamwork that's done between the different groups within our community that actually gets the job done, because having that one person is not that kind of that community voice, but having your council involved, having the chamber involved, having your concerned seniors involved, having your Lloydminster District Health Advisory Committee involved, all these things, those are the lobby groups. And it's got to be grassroots, community oriented, so that government at the other levels can see that there's community buy-in behind these things. So the idea of hiring one person who's going to be an expert in all things Lloydminster and all programs and services where there's inequities on either side of the border in all the parts and pieces of legislation, I think is improbable. But we got to keep telling our story, and we got to keep writing letters, and there's always stuff that is, quite frankly, it's just dumb from one side of the border to the other that just doesn't work.
Did you guys talk about having a lobbyist? Like, did that ever come up?
No, that's not something.
Where'd that come? I don't know where it came from. Like, there was a question asked.
Yeah, somebody asked the question whether they think that we need someone full time who's out there kind of grinding on deputy ministers and ministers to try and get them to see Lloydminster's problems, and it's a challenge, don't get me wrong. Every time you talk to somebody, you have to explain to them what the charter is and why we have it. But what I've found is when you have meaningful communication with MLAs and ministers from from different governments, that when you tell your story and you explain to them why it's important and you explain to them the challenges and what they look like and give real life examples, people raise their eyebrows and they start talking about doing something. Would I like to see more done? Absolutely. Like we met with the health ministers from Alberta and Saskatchewan in June approximately. There were some promises made about meeting more regularly. Whether or not that's actually happened, I don't know. Like I haven't seen any minutes from any meeting from where they met more regularly than they said they would to hold themselves accountable. So it's tough, but I've heard that the mayor is trying to get a rather large contingent of MLAs coming together of ministers from both sides of the government, and I hope that having this kind of summit of these elected officials would be good in terms of getting them together and getting them to understand the challenges that Lloydminster deals with one way or another.
When it comes to I'm not sure where I want to go exactly with this, but when it comes to transparency. Yeah. It's been suggested that the city needs a forensic audit. Now that's something you guys did. You did that back when Mayor Albers was first elected, your first term. There was a forensic audit done with the city. So do you think that would be a good idea? And it's important, I think, to note that one of the people at the forum, one of the councillors who had suggested that, actually walked it back on our program shortly afterwards.
And I understand, like, it's one of those things where if I said at this moment, you don't need a forensic audit, you'll say, what are you hiding? So I am of the opinion, you know what? If the next council feels as though there's been any kind of misgivings, mistrust that is significant enough, where there's some smoke and they want to see if there's some fire, I think it's absolutely within your role to want to require those things so that you have comfort for both yourself and for the community as a whole. We've done it before because we had some indication that there might be some things that need to be looked at, and we did find that there was a significant number of transactions that were not following policy. And it's important to any level of, or to any council, whatever the makeup is of those groups of people, that if they're very concerned with that, then you go in that direction. The only caveat to that, I would say, keep in mind, it costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money, and in my opinion, I don't think it would turn up anything that would be worthy of, I don't think you're going to find as many issues as much as you spend on it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that we do things pretty well, but that's just my opinion. I signed the documents for the mayor following the policy when I'm deputy mayor, and he signs the documents for me when he's mayor. And we're all making sure that we followed the policy to the T for before it even gets to us. So, when I look at these things for the things that we're actually doing, I don't have any concerns. But if there's candidates that are concerned about that, that's within their own kind of purview if they're feeling that way. But just keep in mind, it costs a lot of money.
And we're talking about we're trying to cut as we go. And we're also trying to cut. So I get that, but like, it's sort of the thing where you kind of think to yourself, maybe there should be something done at the end of every 4 years. At the end of four years, maybe there should be, like, I don't know.
Yeah, it depends. Like, because to me, it's a question more so of value for dollar.
I was hoping you could explain. There were some councils, one in particular, that brought up some different kind of accounting, and it kind of went over my head. It went completely over my head. To be honest, it kind of it left me with some question marks that I was like, I have no idea. I'm just not that guy. I'm not that guy.
I did see the question, and I went and I read the paper. You know what I mean? I read the peer-reviewed paper from the CD Howe. So there's the thing. It's a balancing act. It is, do we want a budget? Because he was talking about cash basis budgeting of capital expenses versus accrual basis budgeting of capital expenses, and we're talking budgeting, not the actual spending, but just the way we budget. And there's lots of things that they would give you grades on that paper. They say, okay, these guys are doing a great job. They're doing a great job. They're, missing the mark. So some of those things are like, do you have an approved budget prior to December 31st? That's one of the most important things, in my opinion, is, are you spending money that you've actually approved or not? Well, I can tell you, we are the gold standard as far as ensuring that your budget is approved prior to December 31st and you're not spending money before it's approved in the budget, because we've always, to my memory, always had the budget approved prior to the year starting. So then what the accrual budget would require would be, you would have to estimate every single project that you're working on right now. So every project that the city's working on, so it might be, let's say, a stormwater thing where they do the work in the winter because you can't have water flowing while you're working on stormwater. So let's say you're working on a stormwater thing. You have to estimate when you go to approve the budget, which is going to be before December 31st if you're doing a good job. So let's say in November or early December, you got to estimate where you're going to be at December 31st on that project. So you could say, this is how much is left in that project. And then it sits there. And then in the accrual, you say, okay, we're going to put that in next year's budget as well, but it's coming out of this area over here where we have kind of work in process to be able to actually do the budget. So it shows not only are we going to finish the projects that we said we were going to do last year, but we're also going to do, we're going to do this year's projects. So that's the big thing with accrual versus cash basis. Whereas right now, if something gets approved in the capital budget, it is in that year's capital budget. we do get regular reporting in our GPC meetings about where those projects are at and the percentage of completion and how much we've gone through, whether or not there's issues with them. So, part of that we're already doing in a transparent way over here. But this would require you to have all those numbers figured out for what they're going to be for the end of the year and then include them in that budget. And I personally think time versus money value for what you're getting out of that, I don't think it's more transparent. I think the way that we do it, in my opinion, is more transparent because every quarter we go through all of these projects, every single one of them, whether they're at 0% or at 95% complete, and we say, okay, where's this one at? What's the dollar amount spent? What's the overall budget? Okay, what's the issue with the project? And we go through the list. We also go through procurement of, everything that's been procured every quarter that was over a certain dollar value, whether it was procured by administration, so not within kind of council's decision making, or if it was approved by council. All of those things are different processes we have that don't necessarily meet the standard of that cash basis versus accrual basis, but still demonstrate that no, guys, books are open. Take a look. This is where we're at on stuff. This is what we're working on. We're going to continue down this path. One of the other things, and I think that just in my perception of overall all candidates, not anyone in particular, outside of maybe incumbents, because there's obviously a knowledge kind of gap between them and the others because they know things that the others wouldn't through experience. But there's a lot of information even just in our normal agenda reports that if you were to go through them on even an entire year's worth, and you'd see like all the information, what we get and when we get it, and you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, they're getting this information. They're holding people accountable on their projects that they're doing, and they're asking questions about where things are at. The budget process. Not every community has live streamed their entire budget meeting to actually show, okay, here's everything that we have on that budget, and let's go through it in detail, and let's talk about these projects. So, I think on the transparency side, there's not much more you can do without spending more money, like a lot more money. And that's fine. If that is the prerogative and the priority of that council, then that's fine. If they have ways of making it more transparent, I would caution that some of these things cost more money, and do they provide additional value to the public? That's the question. So even an example of something that we have to think about is payables. You can look at every single payable every single month from the city of Lloydminster, that the city of Lloydminster pays, from the $5 all the way to the $100,000. They're all on there with names redacted. Someone has to go in and redact the name or address of people redact the addresses of people every single month on this 40-page document that gets 2 views a month. You know what I mean? So transparency for the sake of transparency too, that's someone's job. Like that's part of someone's job that they have to do those responsibilities. If we want to be more efficient and maybe that person needs to be doing something else, there are scenarios where we might need to be, dare I say, less transparent.
Okay, it's been brought up that in-camera sessions should go away. These shouldn't exist anymore, that they're useless, basically. I've heard, basically, I'm summarizing here, but that is something that shouldn't be happening, and it does kind of blur the transparency line.
And I understand someone who doesn't know what the purpose is of an in-camera part of the meeting might feel that way, is that they're still meeting. Couple things. 1, no decisions are made in camera. And 2, there's only specific things that you can talk about in camera meetings. Like they have to meet certain guidelines to even be in there in the first place.
Like what?
So the 3 L's, land, legal, labor. So legal would be, you guys, there's some potential lawsuit, something like that coming up, or we're working through insurance related to this, and just so you know, we could potentially be sued on this. Like if something like that came up, or if it's talking about a policy and whether or not the different legal elements have been looked at and things like that, there are things where there's kind of client privilege as far as legal, where you would not want to expose your municipality to a lawsuit, right? Because taxpayers wouldn't want to be exposed to a lawsuit because they might be on the hook for something. So the same with legal would be like, would be business interests. So let's say there's some sort of business contract on the line, or there's some business's private information that's going on that would be talked about within that meeting that is not for public consumption because it might give away trade secrets, something like that. That fits within legal as well. So you wouldn't want to talk
that
about
business.
those. Yeah. So you don't want to hurt that business. That could result in a lawsuit to the city. So there's labor. So let's talk about union negotiations, or if someone's being let go, something like that. There's some things that that cannot be talked about in public to protect individuals' privacy, or that you might need to protect the city's interest as far as negotiations with unions and things like that. So why would you negotiate openly? Say, what's the bottom number you're willing to give a union or something like that, or top number? Why would you tell them that? You got to give your people the ability to go and negotiate those things. Or land would be the other one, of land swaps, land sales, different things like that, where you don't want to hurt your own municipality's negotiating position on different things like that. So that's the high level land legal labor, and I tried my best to give you a couple examples, but there's 100% reasons that those are supposed to be in closed session and should continue to be in closed session. And I think it would be a very big mistake if ever it went into
It would open
open
up
session.
some lawsuits.
Yeah, so if you're planning on getting rid of those, plan on paying some legal bills on behalf of your municipality.
I want to ask you specifically about, and I know there's certain people who are going to say, oh, you're just friends with the mayor. Of course you're going to defend the mayor because you're friends with him. You've known him for 8 years. You've worked with him all the time. But there was some I don't know if I want to say accusations, but that's almost what they were, to say that specifically that the mayor signed some papers to bring in some immigrants, and he personally is going to benefit from bringing these immigrants into Lloydminster.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time wording it because
So
Yeah.
at a high level, no and yes. So yes, in that the mayor did subscribe our municipality to the Rural Renewal Partnership Program with the Alberta government. Really what that is to bring high-skilled labor in, and it connects the municipality with businesses, with agency, to get high-skilled people in there. One of the things I've heard about this complaints is, that program's dumb because they want the cost of living number that they put in there, that is the minimum they have to pay, is way too high. That's more than I pay, my fast food manager, or that's more than I pay my employees. And to be honest with you, my understanding is that's not what the program's for. It's for kind of those high-skilled professions, whether we're talking engineers, technologists, power engineers, things like that, where you would be able to get them in a community that's in a more rural area and be able to pay them an amount where the Alberta government is filling in the rest. It's not nefarious. It's not signing up for some mass immigration thing. Not that there's anything wrong with immigration, but all the accusations I've heard about it are totally bogus. And the mayor has no personal benefit from any of these things outside of, the overall community benefit of some of these highly skilled positions that are hard to recruit, have a pathway to be able to get to Lloydminster and hopefully, want to stay and have a high quality of life and contribute to our community the way that everyone else does.
when it comes to transparency, the website came up several times. That the website's terrible. It's hard. It's so hard to use. What would City Council's role be on controlling the website? Like on little, like it seems like a little thing, but it's turned into a big thing. On like the website obviously would cost a lot to change out and everything, but you must have heard some stuff about it.
Yeah, I want to say
you guys. And the other thing was, well, I didn't know this was happening. Like one councillor said, I didn't know that this was going on downtown, the beautification of downtown and ripping up that road. It took 2 years and businesses were hurt and they never told anybody they were doing it.
Yeah. I guess I take more exception to those other comments rather than the website strictly.
Okay.
The website, like, I remember taking a lot of heat for the website to begin with because I think it was like $250,000. Like, it was not cheap to totally develop that. And when you look at the amount of documents that go on there and how much of an effect it has on running the city operations, it's pretty big. Like, it's not just like a page and another page. Like, there's a lot that goes on. I accept that I get annoyed certain times when it's 3 or 4 clicks to get to a city council agenda or something like that, where I got to figure out, okay, manage the dates. Now I go here and okay, I get it. Nothing's ever as seamless, but those are the pieces of feedback that I think people can report back to the city on the website through report of concern. Sorry, I said on the website, you might not have heard me, but yeah, you report it on report of concern, and there may be ability even in-house for us to make those adjustments. It's never going to be perfect, but there's always ways we can improve the way we reach out and connect with people, because not everyone catches everything that's going on, and I understand that. We all have busy lives. But at the same time, when you have interest in certain subjects, there's different ways you can subscribe. You can subscribe to the newsletters that come out by email every week. You can subscribe to, social media channels. You can subscribe to a whole bunch of different things where you can get that information. You can look at the local paper. You can listen to Kurt Price's program. He talks about different city initiatives. So there's a certain onus on other people of actually getting out there and kind of searching for the things that they're kind of interested in and finding ways to make it hit their desk on a more regular basis.
As far as I didn't know this was happening. I didn't know this was going downtown. What do you see as the city, what could the city do? And are you hearing some suggestions that you like for the city? There's been some suggestions, maybe advertising in different places that 8 years ago when you started didn't exist. Places like, I'll just say it, this program.
Yeah, in fairness, so when I look at that program, or when I look at other kind of big picture plans that we do, whether it's the downtown area redevelopment plan or whether it's the public transit study, you'll hear from people. Even you had a candidate on here yesterday that said there wasn't much public feedback on the public transit study. And I take exception to that because it was one of the 3 highest ever that we got public feedback on in a whole bunch of variety of ways. So the What We Heard report, we got more connections on that report than we did on just about every other one we've ever done. The downtown area redevelopment plan was a little more centralized and localized back when it was initially done back in 19 or something like that. So the plan itself was then, and then there was more work done once the DARC was initiated and again, there's regular communications through emails for all the businesses through economic development. And they found a way to localize them to ensure that they're trying to get the message across to people who have businesses and things like that in the downtown, and they can sign up for newsletters to make sure they get every single thing related to the downtown. So it's never a secret. Like if you watch our GPC meetings, that's another point that I was going to make that I heard someone say is that, these packages are way too big. They don't give them enough time. And, maybe we need to do a day earlier or something like that. It's like, I understand and agree. But the thing is, almost everything that goes to council for a decision, a week or 2 earlier went to them for information through the Governance and Priorities Committee meeting minutes. And that's where a lot of the meat and potatoes are in a meeting and where a lot of questions are asked. And so there's always that period of time on nearly everything where you could reach out to your member of council, or you can reach out to administration and get clarification on something, whether you're elected or whether you're not elected and you're just watching from the sidelines. And you can still get information on something before it goes to a decision. So this idea that there's such a short turnaround before a decision's made, that's not true. It's not true in the slightest. And on big things, we'll see it multiple times before a decision's come. So downtown stuff, on the design of that, I remember it coming back well before it ever went to the budget. And then when it went into the budget, there was constant communication with the people around there. Then there was programs specifically for the people around there to say like, hey, here's some different options of things that might help you through this period of time. And, I think on that project, it gets a lot of flack, but the level of communication on that project was higher likely than any other I've ever seen. Any other. Especially like the weekly regular communication of this is what's going to happen with your water, your sidewalks, your parking, whatever. Here's what we've done to help you during that time. So I take exception to some of those things because I think that the communication on those pieces was actually probably more than it's ever been. And some people are still not happy with it, but that's because you cannot make 100% of the people happy all at once. And everyone has their own challenges that they go through at those times, and I feel for those as well. So
the downtown beautification has been mentioned as part of a want instead of a need. Yeah. What do you think when you hear, who cares what our downtown looks like? Basically, that's what I'm hearing. Who cares what the downtown looks like as long as it functions?
Yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag, to be honest with you. So there is a need in that the oldest infrastructure in the ground happens to be in that area. So pipes from 1948 that need to be replaced and services that need to be replaced happen to be in that area. So from a perspective of renewing our infrastructure to make sure all of our systems work properly, it's a need from that perspective. Whether or not you widen the sidewalks and you put the trees in, and whether you put the light standards in that look nice and feel nice, and whether you continue with the downtown facade improvement program, some might view that as more of a want. But I say this to those people: if you're ripping up those pipes either way, do you plan on ripping up all the work you did in a year or two or a couple of years once things turn around and look better, feel better in terms of the economy? Are you going to rip up all that work so you can put it in those wider sidewalks? Because we need to replace the pipes. Has to happen in the next handful of years. So are you going to do that work twice and you're comfortable spending an extra, I don't know, $1 million on pulling it all out to put new stuff in once we feel like it's enough of a want kind of category that we're able to start doing that work? You know what I mean? Like, do you understand what I mean in terms of you'd have to rip sidewalks up again, you'd have to put new light standards in again, you'd have to put the cells that they put underneath the sidewalks so that they can have all the trees working and that infrastructure working properly? Would you think that would be a good thing to rip that stuff all up again so that you could put the new stuff in to make it look nice?
Well, I can hear people saying right now in my ear though, Jonathan, yeah, but you built the sidewalks too wide and they messed up on how you can't even turn there anymore.
Yeah, I understand the criticism, and that one is a real legitimate criticism. I think the intention of the design of it was to focus on making it safer for pedestrians who are in the downtown, because you want people to be in the downtown and to be going from business to business and not simply getting through the downtown and maybe making a stop along the way.
Including more lighting.
Including more lighting. So it's more of a destination piece. And I get that there's other challenges, maybe social issues that have since kind of more crept into the forefront since then. But that doesn't change the 50-year horizon that you have to look at these things from. So I am a firm believer of trying your best not to put down infrastructure that you're going to tear out of the ground in the next 2 or 3 years, but not to say it doesn't happen.
What about an overpass? An overpass has come up again for trains.
Yeah, the issue with the overpass is, like, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying that it's not included in the $55 million infrastructure gap that we have right now. So it's put another one on my tab if that's the one you want. That you believe is the need. I see that as less of a priority to me, but probably something that still needs to make its way onto the transportation master plan. Like, that individual who's pushing for that is not wrong. But there's other things that are important that need to be done too. So like that's the trick of it. So in my preference, because it's about what you think is more important, I'd rather see 52nd Street extend all the way to 75th Ave and have a proper dangerous goods route going past the refinery. Because I think that would help solve the train problem as well, because now you have one complete end of the city to the other complete end of the city that at least one spot's not going to have a train. Right? That you can get across this road, across the city in a reasonable amount of time. And that project costs closer to $8 million instead of $55 million. But it helps to accomplish the same goal. So it depends on how you look at it. So, that's one project that it probably needs to work its way onto the capital list. I still think the north-south corridor is going to be incredibly important to move people through the city, because we went through annexation. We've got growth on the south side of the city. Or we're going to have our growth on the south side of the city because that's where the available lands are. At some point in the future, there's going to be a bypass that the Alberta government has gazetted on the south side of the city, just on the other side of the land we annexed. People are going to live there, and they're going to need to get north-south through the city in a more efficient way. So the north-south corridor at some point, which is a twinning of Highway 17, will need to occur. And I think, to me, whatever the cost of that one is, which 8 years ago was $27 million, so let's say 60 now, is probably a bigger priority in terms of the volume of traffic moving around there. So, but then again, that's all personal preference. There's no right or wrong. I think you have to look at your priorities. You have to look at your administration, what they're recommending to you. You have to look at the other things they affect, like mine specifically when I was talking about that, the dangerous goods route, and I think that the dangerous goods route is an important thing to have, and to have it outside of areas where there's residential properties, all those things matter. But not one is right or wrong. It just, you have to understand that when you say these things, they cost money.
When I hear the overpass, I just keep thinking to myself, should this be a provincial thing? Is it a civic or a provincial thing?
Well, and it's even more complicated than that. It's federal as well, because the rail lines are all regulated federally.
Good point.
So it's one where there's potentially more pots of money where you might be able to get someone else to pay a portion of the bills, but it's really hard to say. And you need their cooperation. And in my experience, and I think everyone's experience when they're sitting at a rail line, CN and CP isn't always real cooperative.
When it comes to, and we talked about the pool a little bit here, and it comes to the pool, it sounds like for the majority of councillors that are looking at coming on city council, it's something that they like to kick down the road. Can it be kicked down the road?
I think you can start planning now. I think the planning phase isn't that far away, but it's the debt issue. And people are not wrong with saying that it's a matter of what our debt load is right now. So right now, the city of Lloyd is getting closer to its total debt, or its debt limit of 75% of the prescribed debt limit. So just to explain that quickly, the province of Alberta prescribes what our maximum debt limit is. It's based on a formula really that is the revenue that the municipality can raise. So we're getting closer to that line. We're not hitting it. We're not at it. And I don't think there's any likelihood that we will hit it. But we as a municipality have said, no, we're not willing to go all the way up to that 100% that the Alberta government put. We're going to put 75% of that is the maximum we're willing to take on as debt as a municipality without negatively affecting the way we can run our business and the amounts of payments we would have, everything else. So we're getting that 75% line is the one that we're getting closer to, which makes you feel uncomfortable a little bit. But if you look in the next 5-6 years, we're going to have some things coming off the books that are long-term debt payments and some loans that'll be repaid, where there's going to be an opportunity to borrow again. And we also know, just as a function of the way revenues raise and the way things go up, that debt limit is also going to increase over time, especially with getting new assessment. So, that new assessment of 2% per year even, that makes your debt limit go up. So there's going to be an ability to borrow more and still stay well below that 75% threshold that we set with us, or with ourselves.
That's something that I was surprised I didn't hear more of. That maybe, as stuff comes off the books, then this could be added to the books.
Yeah.
I was surprised I didn't hear that more.
Well, and there was a couple things maybe I thought maybe worth mentioning that are similar on the subject. So one of the comments was we need to have all the money up front to be able to do these things. And
Yes. Yep.
the challenge I have with that statement in general is what you're saying is...
Why go into debt at all, right?
Well, yeah, why go to debt at all? And I understand there's lots of people whose upbringing is keep away with debt, debt is bad. The other side of it is generational equity. So should the people who live here right now not get the benefit of the taxes that they're paying right now? Do you know what I mean? Like, should they not get the benefit of the services rather than, okay, everyone, let's pool together our money for the next 25 years so we can afford this thing for other people's children to use at some point in the future?
Right.
Which, don't get me wrong, reserves are that to a certain extent, but you have to have a balance between the generation paying the bills and the ones getting the benefit of the services. So I take exception to needing to save all up front to be able to do everything that you do. Another one that came up that I thought was worth mentioning that's in the recreation kind of ballpark was basketball floors and things like that. Someone brought up saying that, maybe our needs are going to be a little bit different. We're going to have to look at basketball floors. One of the things that the city did do in the last handful of years is when both school divisions were looking at building more in terms of facilities and amenities, in both cases, we invested in those projects. So we invested in the Catholic school division when they built the vault, and we also invested in the public school division when they built their new gym. The reason we did that is because basically it was a requirement that they would make it available for public use, which they do through user groups and things like that. But that buys us 15, 20 years from not having to build more field houses, because we have more facilities that are available for public use and for basketball and for whatever, that now the whole community benefits from that, and it was good value of money spent by city council.
What else you got around that subject?
Yeah, well, the other one was just maybe there was something related to the golf course.
Oh yeah, why do we own the golf course? Why should we, like, should that be kind of privatized is what I took from that.
Yeah, you know what? There's an argument in either direction related to privatizing it or not. I think the argument is tough to make when you think about the taxes versus the user fees on that one. So if the indoor pool, let's say, is 70% subsidized by taxes and really the user fees only pay about 30% of that, then the golf course would be a 90-10. Like, it's substantially different. Like, almost everything is paid for by the user at the golf course, so whether we own it or not. So unless you're looking for quick cash or something like that for the municipality, then you could sell it off, but then you'd have the challenge of, okay, you might lose curling because curling doesn't make a whole bunch of money. So then all those people who liked curling, if the golf course, whoever bought it, doesn't keep curling going, then curling just dies in Lloydminster. So that's the reason I think you hold on to it, is because you don't want curling to die, because it's really important to a lot of people. And you want to have breadth of services.
One thing that didn't come up a lot of is the airport.
Yeah.
I was a little bit surprised.
Yeah.
That didn't come up more. It kind of came up when people were talking about what do we do to attract doctors, and there was a comment that doctors don't pick where they go anyway. So.
Well, we don't have to address every comment.
No, but I also wondered because that
physician attraction is an important role that ends up falling in a municipality's lap, and it's not new. And chambers have been dealing with it. Like, it's been priorities of chambers and municipalities for years and years and years and years. And having a nice place to live with high quality of services matters. So the example I heard of not long ago was even the tennis courts, because we got flack from the tennis courts back in my first term that we ever upgraded or increased the number of courts, because nobody ever uses those. They always seem empty. Whenever I go there in the summer, they seem like they're packed. But either way, and it was government of Alberta money that paid for it. But the question is, when you look at services and you think, okay, well, why are we even providing this? It doesn't make any money. Well, no, not all services are supposed to make money, but they might make it a nice place to live. And maybe there's a doctor who's deciding whether he wants to live here or not. And having a nice tennis court is really important to him. So you got to look at all of these things as, quality of life pieces, and wanting to make sure that, and not just doctors, but anyone, even if you work at Walmart or if you work in any retail, you want to have a nice place to live. You want to have amenities that you can afford to go use. And that's why we're all here. That's why you choose to live in a community and you don't go live on an acreage in the middle of nowhere somewhere, because you want to be close to the amenities that you want to use on a regular basis.
That brings up public transportation.
Yep.
And it was suggested that maybe, some of the businesses like Lakeland College and things like that, the school divisions could somehow help to offset the cost of public transportation.
Well, don't get me wrong, there's definitely partnerships, I think, that need to have those conversations. One of the things I was actually going to correct on the Lakeland College comment was, when we spoke with Lakeland College, they specifically said that that can't be top-down driven from the board or from administration at Lakeland College. That's got to be the students organically wanting to do that.
They just can't add it to their...
No, that you can't just add it to someone's
tuition.
It's got to be the students kind of, taking a vote, are we going to add this to our tuition or not? And there's got to be buy-in at their level to be able to do that, which I think is totally reasonable and fair, that you wouldn't be forcing costs onto people who already are, relatively low income, slow income because you're going to school, that you don't want more costs being pushed down on you. So that was one thing I heard about that conversation that I thought I should correct.
Okay. What, am I forgetting anything here? Jonathan, do you got anything else that you heard that you thought that I haven't touched on?
The purchasing one I think was worth talking about. There's two things. So one is the purchasing thing. So at the All Candidates Forum, there was the question of whether or not you can choose local in purchasing policy. And you can, but it's only if within the new West Trade Partnership Agreement, if it's goods and services under $75,000 or under $200,000 for construction. And it's just an acknowledgement that the council would have to make, that it's going to cost more money, and that you would have to understand that when you go into it. And then the challenge I had with it was several said we got to deal with it with a case-by-case basis. And no, you're not dealing with it with a case-by-case basis, because council's not sitting there approving all these things. You've got other people doing that. You need a policy that is clear so that your people know what to do in all situations. So you wouldn't be able to do it if it was over 75,000 or over 200,000 for construction. And if you did, you would end up potentially exposing your municipality to legal liability. So there's challenges that you'd have to know and understand if you were going down that direction. Another thing I wanted to bring up is you often see people getting mad about like, oh, there was only $400 between this, on this construction thing, and it went to a non-local company. The other thing is unit price contracts. So when you get to unit price contracts, it's like, okay, I'm going to move this much dirt for you. I'm going to put it over here, and I'm going to put in a culvert. And basically there's pre-approved contractors, and it's clear that they all have the ability to do the work, will do the work, all that other stuff, and it's purely on price. If you make a decision on anything else and you don't take the low bid, when you have pre-approved contractors doing a unit price contract, you expose your municipality to all of the profit that the company that lost because you went with the local, you would expose them to a lawsuit that you'd have to pay back. So let's say it was $300,000 worth of profit that was built into their bid. You'd have to pay them $300,000 on top of paying your local guy, even if it was only $400 difference between the two. So it's something that I think is important that people need to understand.
The law is the law.
The law is the law, and you sometimes have to take low bid even though they're not local, because it's the law. And one last thing that I thought was worth mentioning as far as the men's shelter, one of the things I've heard is we're going to push it out. I've heard people use the term, we're going to push it out of the residential area. If you cannot push it out. It's already an approved use, the existing one within the property that it's at, and so long as it's not violating, health standards, bylaws, all these other things that, could potentially get it condemned or something like that. So long as all those things weren't true, you don't have the ability to push it out. And if you interfere with the Government of Alberta contract, you actually expose the municipality to legal liability, which has happened in other jurisdictions in Alberta. So your administration's likely going to tell you, no, we can't push it out, not the way you say you can, and you say, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to do that anyways. You actually expose yourself potentially to personal liability as a councillor that could be sued by the Alberta government for interfering with their contract. If you're acting what's called not in good faith. I'm not a lawyer, don't take that as legal advice, but I heard a lawyer say it once, that if you don't take your administration's advice on something where they tell you you're exposing your municipality to legal liability, you become potentially personally liable.
Okay, that's kind of scary.
But it's just something that I thought that was worth mentioning, because this idea that you can push it out, we're going to shut it down. No, you're not going to, and I think what's important is that you're going to work with both the community and have good conversations with the people at the Lloydminster Social Action Coalition to make sure that you find a solution that works for everybody. But an idea of I'm going to push it out, it's not going to happen.
Do we put too much expectations on our council members? Do we think that they have more power than they actually do?
Oh, 100%. Like I've heard so many things about things that I've done, even, and I don't want to get into the depths of it, like back in COVID, of decisions that were made that were actually made by the province. Do you know what I mean? Like where we had no power or say.
Well, I've heard that said. Like, would you allow this to happen?
Yeah, and it's the level of authority is not as big as some people think, and even the things that we deal with on a regular basis are not always the things that people think. And some of the costs we pay are similar to everyone else. We pay carbon tax out of our electricity bill the same as you guys do at home. If yours goes up, ours goes up.
So I think it comes back to the legal thing too, where you said, like, if the province is telling you to do something, and you're the only council member, we're not doing this. Like, does that?
Well, what
would happen in that situation? Like, you just vote against it, but it goes through anyway, but you yourself.
No, it doesn't matter. Like, the point is if you're interfering with a contract, and this is me reading a news story plus talking to a lawyer, so it's not legal advice, and I'm not a lawyer. Do not think I'm a lawyer. But quite generally speaking is you have to make decisions that are within or that are in good faith, which means you cannot do things that would negatively affect your municipality and expose it to the legal liability risk. And if you're made aware of that by your administration, then you expose yourself, is my point.
Was there anything you heard around policing, like anything you heard around crime that you thought?
No, I think that, the one thing around policing and crime that I think most people said is they understand that we're adding some more members and that there's been some challenges. And I really do think that most of the candidates kind of got it right, that, as a community, it's really important to know your neighbors. Like, I've only been on my street since 2019, but I could probably name almost every single person within about 10 or 15 houses down my street. Know them by first name, they know my kids, and we keep an eye out for each other. Does that mean crime doesn't happen? No. Like, my backyard still got broken into and I lost my longboard and I'm not real happy about it, but crime absolutely still happens. But I think that we're doing about as much as we can, and the only improvements I think we can make are more on a communal basis, outside of hiring more RCMP. And then there's justice issues that are beyond our control that are more at a federal level, where we don't necessarily have an ability to get rid of long-term anyone who might be committing crimes in our community.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Did you report your longboard theft?
You know what? I just did right now on this thing. No, I didn't report that.
You
crime.
didn't, because that's what we're hearing from the RCMP. Saying, if you don't report it, we don't know what's happening.
And to be honest, I'm guilty of that as well, for that possession. But it was a matter of time and effort, and I was like, I lost my longboard. It's my fault. I left my shed sitting open for 2 weeks. I didn't secure my property at all, and I lost something, and that's on me. So I'm not going to make anyone else do extra work for my screw up.
Anything that we're forgetting?
No,
Jonathan?
I think that we've talked about most of it. Like, I know you talked quite a bit. You had the question about outside parties, outside influence, and I know where some of that's coming from, because when we went through the MDP process, when we went through the land use bylaw, there are people who believe that somehow some larger world organizations, whether that's the WEF, whether the UN, is pushing down their agendas that's showing up into our documents. And I
15-minute cities came up.
I sincerely do not believe that that's the case. All of the documents we've had come across our desk are organic and with local people's feedback. And, we got the receipts kind of thing to be able to show that that's true, where, people are interested in not having, development only on 17 and 16. And at some point in the future, they'd like to see some smaller local development within neighborhoods, especially when you think about Lloydminster growing to, 60, 70,000 people in the future. Like, it can't always be one street, two street. So I understand why people said that within the documents. I also understand the other side, why people believe that all these other things are true, but they're not. Like, there's no outside influence as far as that stuff goes. There's absolutely influence where you're talking to other people in the community and getting your perspective on things, talking to business owners, talking to the chamber, talking to the school divisions, talking to parents, talking to friends, talking to people at hockey. All that stuff plays into, decision-making process and information that you get feedback and how you, but at the end of the day, all of that also comes into the history of all the documents you've looked at in your time on council and whether or not they're relevant and related. So, I struggled with this land use bylaw stuff most recently because I've been around. I've been around when we got our housing needs assessment report that said in that report that we need to find more opportunities to have more density and have easier approval process for more density if we want to deal with the homelessness problem. So that's one of the solutions, is to have redevelopment in certain neighborhoods and have more density, but everyone doesn't want that. And that's fine. The council of the day, like, I voted against it, but everyone voted to push it to the next council. But, in the long term, it only just doesn't help to solve the problem when you don't use the information and the documents you have at your disposal. The other one that I think of is, how do we become more efficient as a city if we continue to just grow and grow and grow? We have lots of land. I agree with that. That's true. It was also incredibly difficult to get. I was on the annexation committee. It took a very long time and it was very difficult to get that land. It also cost more to service more land, whereas if you were able to service more people within a certain plot of land, and I'm not talking about everyone living on top of each other. I'm talking about some neighborhoods having a couple extra duplexes or threeplexes than they had before, and getting rid of the old flop house. but it would be more efficient in the long run and help keep your property taxes lower in the long run for the entire city.
One of the things I think that people, and maybe I'm guilty of this too, is believing that the land use bylaw is written in stone. Is it written in stone, or does it change? Does it float?
It's not even a statutory document. The MDP, I could see why they feel that way, because it goes to both provinces for their approval. But the land use bylaw, I think we've changed 70, 80 times in my time on council. So there's been 70 or 80 changes made to it. If you want to change it, go ahead and change it. And you know, the WEF can go, whatever they said wouldn't matter one way or another, because you can absolutely change those things. So no, there's no outside influence. No, I don't know who any of those people are. No, that's all bogus. And I want people to understand that that's just not a real thing for us. There might be other places. I'm not trying to say that. Calgary, Saskatoon, they might make decisions for fourplexes to try and solve their needs and have blanket housing or blanket zoning. We're not doing that. That's not something that was ever even suggested in Lloydminster, but there was pamphlets that went out across the city that said that that's what we were doing. So people have to understand that not all this stuff that they see, read, or hear from the people around them are from people who are knowledgeable on the situation.
Let me ask you this, and I'll put you on the spot here, because there's been, some meetings here and some meetings here, and they go, well, the city council couldn't even show up to that meeting.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. We had this meeting, we had it here, and Kurt, we didn't even see any council members come. The mayor didn't show up. It was an official meeting we called. Why not go to that?
Well, I think everyone has their own reason for why they wouldn't go. Mine is a little more straightforward. Yeah, I think it was on September 30th. I'm an accountant. September 30th is a deadline for some stuff that I needed to get done. And it was, I was working till their meeting was over. So, first of all, we weren't invited to the meeting. Like, the meeting was already advertised saying that we were going to be at it before we had even gotten an invitation. And I didn't know if I could go because I knew I'd be busy that day. And then I ended up being so busy that I was working until after the meeting was done. So I didn't really even have an opportunity.
When it comes to these 14 people that are running, how much respect do you have for these 14 people that put their name out there? Because I look at these 14 people and I go, wow, like, you've opened yourself up to a lot of stuff here. You've opened yourself to criticism. We've criticized some of them here, maybe not named today, but we've looked at some stuff and went, well, that's not exactly the way that it should have been said, or maybe it was meant to be said. But all these people there's no doubt in my mind, they're passionate about, and they love this community. You have to love this community to be able to give yourself to it.
I can speak to it from experience that I know it takes a ton of courage to do it, because to put yourself out there, to let people, or to ask people, whether or not they think you have good ideas, whether they think you have good vision, whether they think that, you're the right stuff for their community, it takes a ton of courage, because it's hard to find out sometimes what people think of you. And yeah, I do respect people going through the process. There's no question, and it's not easy to do, and not a lot of people do it. And you really put yourself out there when you go to all these different forums, when you get recorded on something, and you're answering questions live, doing these interviews. It's outside of people's comfort zones all the time. So, I so far what I've seen though has been, I'm going to be honest, like I had things that I talked about, but that's not to say that there's not incredibly kind of passionate, intelligent people who are going to make great decisions on the behalf of our community. Even the ones that I disagree with on some things, I still think, there's pieces of information that maybe once they it'll change a little bit. And that doesn't mean they'll change who they are, and that doesn't mean they'll change kind of their values. But I think just having more information sometimes make you see the world a little bit differently. And it's hard to have all the information that a previous councillor has had, because there's a knowledge gap. There is an experience gap that happens when you've had someone who's been there before and has seen and understood the alternatives.
We have a gentleman working here who's relatively new to the community. He came from a small town in Saskatchewan. Well, I shouldn't say small town, a city in Saskatchewan. And he couldn't believe that there was 14 people running. He said, coming from where I came from, there's no way that we'd ever have 14. Like, if we had 6 seats, there'd probably be 8 people running. If we had 9, there'd be 10. And we just barely the limit. The engagement the city has is really, he said, to be commended.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. And, you know, when you look at it, Alberta, the government of Alberta has a dashboard, and they'll look at the health of a municipality. And one of the things they look at for the health of municipality is how many people they have running in their municipal elections and whether everyone's all acclaimed or not. I can appreciate that our mayor was acclaimed, probably because there wasn't a single person in this city that thought, A, I'll either beat him, or B, I can do a better job than he's doing. Because in my opinion, I don't think that there's another person, in my opinion, who said that they could, or who could. But mind you, no one else stepped up, so I can't say that for certain. But, you know, for the rest of the candidates, that means we're in a healthy position in that we're not having acclamation at the local level. And even our school boards, we're not having acclamation. That's a sign of a good, healthy democracy and sign of a good, healthy municipality that's got, you know, it's got conversations that need to be had and needs direction that needs to be adjusted. Acclamation isn't always a good thing.
But even when those conversations are uncomfortable conversations, at least we're having them.
Yeah, and I think for the most part, they've been relatively respectful.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you.
No problem.
We took a lot of your time up today.
Yeah.
A lot of it up today, but we really appreciate you, and we appreciate the 8 years that you gave the city
Awesome.
as well. Thank you.
No, thank you very much.
And I know you said to me, well, you know what? Like after the election, you're going off the grid.
Yeah.
You're like, but you won't be totally off the grid. You'll be paying attention to everything. If we have questions, would you consider coming back on the program?
I'm not saying no, but we'll see how informed I feel that I am. Because, you know, part of the reason why I agreed to do this is because I do feel as though I'm relatively informed because I've been at the table for the past 8 years, so I feel comfortable enough answering questions. But when I go off the grid and I'm just relying on, you know, newsletters and maybe listening to the odd council meeting if I do that, because I'm kind of going to be done with social media, I think, at least for the next year. We'll see how informed I really am and how much I care about, you know, the politics stuff. And because I really want to put all my care into, you know, making sure I get my kids to hockey on time and making sure they're doing their homework and making sure we're having fun as a family and all that stuff and building relationships with the people around me. So that stuff is the stuff that I feel like I've missed out on in the past 8 years that other people just get to do in their normal life that I want to do extra of it.
And the wrestling career is just taking off too.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll get back in the wrestling ring, but, you know, if that guy talks smack about Lloydminster again, I just might have to.
Hope to see you out on Remembrance Day. Thanks again, Jonathan.
Yeah, awesome.
Come out and put a poppy on, please.